morning. Do you remember an advert on the telly that said, it was an American guy, but somebody with an American accent, and he was saying, do something every day that excites you. Well, here I am down at Sandwich Bay, and I'm doing something that excites me, which is I'm going to attempt to catch a large bass. The only trouble is, it's getting very late in the year and the temperatures are dropping. This morning I had to scrape the ice off the car and the temperature on the thermometer was 2 degrees centigrade. Well, now I've got to the coast and it's risen to a scorching 4 degrees Celsius. Now, I don't know why it's slightly warmer down at the coast. Is it because the sea is slightly warmer than the air? I don't know. Anyway, the website that I go on that gives you information about tides and stuff like that tells me that the sea temperature in Sandwich Bay is 12 degrees. Now, from what I understand, as long as the temperature is above 10, then you stand some sort of chance of catching one. The other thing that's slightly against me is that I don't know anything about how to catch large bass. Bit of a drawback, wouldn't you say? Now, as I say, I don't know anything about bass fishing, but I've been a carp fisherman for 50 years, more than 50 years now. So I know a little bit about fishing. I've caught the odd carp in my time. What I was trying to do was use my carp fishing mindset, if you like, directed towards the problems of trying to catch a bass from the beach. Now, I have been sea fishing a few times, so although I would say I'm a novice, I'm not a complete and utter novice. So I know a little bit about the principles of sea fishing. And I've caught a few whiting and dogfish, but I caught a little schoolie bass, and I thought, blimey, this is a beautiful little thing. So that got me interested in bass. So I went on the internet, on YouTube, because I'm quite an enthusiastic YouTube watcher, and I watched everything I could that was related to bass. And there was one video that put me onto the Sporting Fish website, which is about bass, but it's about lots of other things as well. And there's a guy on there called Sporty Rob, and boy, what he don't know about bass. And he's largely influencing the approach that I'm going to use today. Now, I have no idea whether this is going to work. It could be a complete and utter disaster. I'll get set up and go through it with you. Right, let's get started. Let's go down to the shoreline and see what the state of the sea is. I've got to say, despite the coldness of the air, it is a beautiful morning here this morning. We've had winds blowing for the past couple of days, and I suppose that's what's lumping the water up. So we've got a nice, how many? 1, 2 waves coming in. Now, using my carp angler's mindset, the first thing that comes to me is location. Where will the bass be located? Well, the general advice is that they follow the shoreline. They feed very close to the shoreline. And experts talk about fishing 5, 10, 15 metres out from the edge. It makes sense because of the movement of the tides and longshore drift and all that stuff. Anything that's been alive and has died, or even things that are still alive, will get swept along by the water movement and end up washed up on the beach. And the bass know this, so they patrol the edges to pick up anything they can find. So that's where I ought to put my baits. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going all out for this. There's none of this put one out for bass and another scratching rod to see what else I can catch. That's not really the carp angler's mindset. I learnt long ago, many years ago, that if you're going to focus on a particular catch or a fish, even one individual fish, then you've got to put 100% into it. None of this half-hearted stuff. Well, I'll put another rod out for anything that comes along. Now, if you're going to fish for carp, you fish for carp. Everything you've got, all your resources, all your time, all your money, all your bait, everything. And I rather suspect that the same applies to the catching of large fish at sea. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fish both rods close in. Oh, the tides start to come in. We're two hours short of high water, and I suspect my position where I am up there, I'm going to have to move up the beach a bit, up to the high water line. But we can sort that out when the need arises. Right, I hope you can hear me above the waves. Let's just adjust you a little bit. There we go. I'm going to use a pretty standard rig for fishing for large bass. A single 6/0 hook on a snood that long. So what's that? 5 foot? Something like that. 4.5 foot maybe. I've got a swivel and a running lead. Where's me running lead? Here we go. I've got a running lead on my main line and it's stopped by a bead. The bead is actually stopping the lead from coming down at the knot. I always use loops at the end of my main line. I find it's much more convenient and easy for switching rigs and so on. Now to this, I'm going to fish a whole squid on this rod and mackerel on the other. I'll show you how I do that. Right, baiting up. Here's my squid. I'm going to put the hook in about an inch from the tail end, pull it through, and then I'm going to thread this down the length of the squid. I'm not trying to instruct anybody how to suck eggs here. This is just my learning curve. I'm on a learning curve here, folks. Right, through there and through the head. Oh, I'll get through the head. There you go. Yeah, I'm much better putting boilies on the hook, to be fair. Right. Now, what they tell you to do is do 2 half hitches around the tail like that. It stops the squid bunching up. That's not knotting the line. That's just stopping it all bunching in the bottom. So I've got that all hooked up. Size 6/0 hook there, standing proud. I'd take that if I was a bass, wouldn't you? So I'm now going to cast it out. the drag on the reel very slack, as it can go. So if a fish wants to pick it up and run with it, then it's got every chance. Right, this time I've got something slightly different. I've got a 4-ounce lead here because I'm not happy with the way the lighter lead is washing around in the surface. It's got quite lumpy out there. I think I need something that holds steady a bit better. So that's that. Now mackerel. Here's the mackerel. I'm not going to use head and guts. I'm going to kind of cut it in half. There we go, half a mackerel. And what I'm going to do, I shall use the head bit. And what I'm going to do is put the hook through the top of the head. And I'm going to do what Graham Pullen does, and that's make a cut so that the hook shank is buried in the skin of the bait. And this last one, that's going through that. I forgot to wind it round. There we go. Right. I think we probably need a little bit of elastic. So we'll hold that in place, so I'll just get some. Find things when you want them, can you? Right, bait elastic. So there we are, half a mackerel. There's an awful lot of bouncing around of the rod tip and it's pulling over now. What's all that about? Is that the lead settling in the water movement, in the tide run? Yeah, I mean, it looks as if you've got a bite, but I'm sure that can't be it. Perhaps I ought to put a gripper lid on. Remember, I'm trying to feel my way through this. I don't really know what I'm doing. So maybe I will put a grip lid on to try and hold still. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Ah, now that's better. Getting the rods up high and out of the way stops all that lunging about. That's a lot more happy situation. So I'm up here at the high tide mark. What's the time? Oh, it's just turned 11 o'clock. So we've got another hour until high water. As you can see, probably see my hands are shaking. Oh dear, it's such an effort. This is no good for 70-year-olds, I'll tell you. But if you want to get out there and achieve your objectives, this is what you got to do. I tell you what, there's a lot to be said for a day at the seaside trying to catch a fish. You've got lovely weather. Well, not so lovely now. They didn't forecast rain, but there's some horrible black clouds creeping up behind me, coming off the land. It better not rain, otherwise I shall have a right old swear up. Oh, egg sandwiches, my favourite. Thanks, Chris. The problem with trying to learn a new set of skills, in my case it's sea fishing skills, is that you never know whether you're doing it right or not. I remember when I first started carp fishing, I fished for days, weeks. Might even have been months before it was months before I caught my first carp. And you sit there thinking, is there something else I should be doing? Am I doing this right? So you read and read and read and yeah, I'm doing that and I'm doing that, but you never know. It's that first bite and that first fish you get which is confirmation that what you're doing is somewhere near right. And that's the mindset that I'm in at the moment. Although I'm doing it fairly by the book, you just don't know, do you? You think, oh, well, I don't know, perhaps I am doing it wrong. I just need a fish to give me that confidence to carry on. The left-hand rod's been bouncing around like a thing demented, so I'm going to see if there's anything managed to snag itself on one of those big 6-0 hooks. Something's had a go at it. Must be crabs or something, mustn't it? I'll have to put a new one on and cast it out. I see the reason now why they suggest having very long snoods for 5 or 6 foot. Not only does it allow the bait to waft around in the currents, but when you have your rods up high like this, it keeps the line out of the water and stops that horrible lunging on your rod tip as the waves crash into the line. So you get the line coming down at a steep angle and goes over the top of all that crashing and tumbling water, which is a perishing nuisance. Now here's an idea, ground baiting for bass. trying to learn any new skill is difficult. I mean, my carp fishing comes naturally to me now because I've been doing it for so long. But this sea fishing lark, although they share similar characteristics, it is a skill set on its own. And it's all these little things like getting your rods up high so your line avoids the waves and that sort of thing that you only learn by experience. And this is quite a steep learning curve for me. I was thinking the other day that the common characteristics between sea fishing and carp fishing, for instance, is that if you're going to catch big fish in either, one of the things you've got to do is avoid the small fish. Now in this case at sea it's the whiting and the dogfish. Now I have had a few sessions, and very enjoyable sessions they were too, of catching lots of whiting and the odd dogfish, and I enjoyed it. But to catch a big fish you've got to use methods and tactics which avoids them. And similarly, if you're carp fishing, you've got roach and bream and tench and things like that, which are all lining up to take your bait before a carp ever gets near it. And I think the answer in both cases is to use a big bait. Big baits are selective, although some of the baits I was casting out previously, like sausages of squid and mackerel wraps, I mean, if you put them out on a pennel rig and you get one whiting on the top hook and another whiting on the bottom hook. So, I mean, whiting will just muller anything that you put out there. But I think the basic principle is fairly sound, and by fishing very close to the shore like this, then you're putting your bait where the bass patrol. I don't know whether whiting come in that close. I've no idea. You know what I said about whiting not coming near the shore? This little fella is an absolute perfect size for a live bait. So that's what I'm going to do. Lip hook him on the 6-0 and put that out. Okay folks, the whiting's out there. Now I'm fully aware he's not going to survive very long, if he's survived at all. But that doesn't matter, because when he does kick the bucket, it'll be a dead bait, lip hooked through the lower jaw. So I won't mind that. There's been loads of whiting off of this beach for the past few sessions where I've fished it, and it's probably the most obvious food source that there is going. I mean, with millions of whiting out there, what's a predatory fish to eat? A whiting, of course. So using one as bait makes an awful lot of sense. I have thought of using one of those rig sliders, you know, where you slide the live bait down the line. I don't think I'm at that sort of level yet. I want to master the basics of bass fishing before I move on to something like that. Don't try to run before you can walk. Well, we're at the top of the tide now. The rod's still banging away like a good one. Although it's typical, isn't it? As soon as you turn the camera on, it stops. But it has been, that left-hand rod has been banging away. I'm wondering whether it's a group of whiting that's hammering that mackerel bed. Perhaps they're doing it in pairs or even threes, biting chunks out of it. I've got pretty sharp teeth, whiting, I've noticed. They're very small, but they show. Oh, here we go. They're very small, but they're quite sharp. Things have sort of quietened a bit. I've noticed the tide pools dropped right off. I think we're in a period of slack water. The lines are going down to the baits in a straight line, so it kind of signifies there's no sideways pull. Still waiting for that bass bite. And get this level. Yeah, so live bait on the right hand rod, mackerel head on the left hand rod. Plenty of time left yet. I'm just thinking about the rod knocks that I'm getting on this left hand rod. I mean, it looks very like whiting bites to me. If it is whiting and they're having a go at the mackerel head, a bit like pike fishing where the actions of small fish can attract the predators. So if there is one or a couple of whiting pecking away at it, you would have thought that that would be a good attractor for the bass if there's any in the vicinity, because they'll detect all that activity around a food source and move in and snaffle it up themselves. So I think I'll leave it there in the hope that their munching on the mackerel head's going to attract a bass into the vicinity. Right, I think it was whiting on that rod. They've absolutely mullered the bait, so what I'm down to now is this thing. That'll catch a big fish, won't it? I'm sure you've worked out by now that this is not an instructional video. I mean, I'm in no position to instruct anybody on sea fishing. I could give you a few tips on carp fishing, but sea fishing, no. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I want you to comment on what I'm doing and point me in the right direction. I need your advice. Would you please give it? This is the way you learn, you see, off of the experiences of others. So if you've got anything to add, could you put it in the comments below and do the usual like and subscribe rubbish. That would be nice. Imagine, I won't need my pension anymore. I'd live off YouTube money. Oh my stars, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I've just noticed there's a pig flying up there. Judging by the lack of activity on the right hand rod, I think it's fair to assume that Mr. Whiting has now turned his toes up, and he'll either be lunch for a bass or lunch for his mates. Are whiting cannibals? Do they eat each other? I suppose if they find one dead they will. If you was hungry you'd eat anything, wouldn't you? Here I'm just adjusting the clutch to make sure that if a bass does take the live bait, it can pull line off of him. Willie the whiting was still alive. Good man. Well, the tide's well and truly on the turn now, and as the water goes out, that means my bait effectively gets nearer and nearer the shoreline. And as the tide's receding, I've noticed that the interest on the baits has become more and more limited. I'm not getting so many bites. I wonder whether it means that as the bites reduce, the whiting lose interest in coming close to the shore because there are predators about. I mean, all bait fish and all victims of predatory action know when the predators are about and take steps to avoid them. So does it mean that if they've stopped pecking at the baits, they've moved away? So although they will come to sort of 20 yards to the shoreline, they won't come any closer because they know there are bass there. Ooh, I hope so. Well, I've got about an hour to go now before I pack up and clear off. I think I've started to get the hang of it. I think more practice is required, but I think I'm getting there. It's mastering the basics. So again, if you've got any comments you want to make about how to catch large bass, put them in the comments below and do the usual like and subscribe stuff, you know. Tide's dropping now. It's a pity I've started this campaign so late. I could have done with taking it up a month earlier when the sea's a bit warmer, but hey ho, there you go. Oh, I'm getting a bit cold. Oh dear. I was thinking, I wonder what sort of bites you get on from bass on a live bait and on great big sort of amounts to a dead bait. I am told that you get this real slam dunk of a bite where it almost pulls the rod out the rest. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Because I had a right vicious stand rod. I don't know, was it a bass? I don't, probably not. But the rod went right over. Nothing, didn't take any line off the clutch, and it's well loose enough. Wonder what that was. Interesting. When all is said and done, it's not a bad way to spend a day. I mean, it's a bit on the chilly side, but all this beach, look, all the way down to what's that over there, Ramsgate over in the distance. And if we go the other way, pan right the way round, nobody on the beach down there, all the way to Deal. It's not bad having a beach to yourself, is it? It's just a pity that the big bass have not showed up. But as I said, it is getting a bit late in the year. I'm just wondering whether I ought to leave it till next summer, but I don't know. You got to do what you got to do, haven't you? Enthusiasm overrides common sense. Willie the whiting on the right there is starting to get a bit agitated. Wonder if it means there's a predator about. He's been sitting there asleep for the past half hour. Now he's started bouncing around a bit. It either means he's croaked it and his mates are noshing on his carcass, or there's a predator waiting to spring. Oh, there he goes. Look. That's the other rod now. Oh my God. That's got to be whiting, isn't it? That left-hand rod's still got the mackerel on it. Well, they better hurry up because I've got to go home in a minute. Oh, there we go. Let's see if this develops. It won't on camera, they never do. Go on. Oi. Probably wave action, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. Wait. That's whiting, isn't it? Definitely whiting. Well, that's all, folks. That's it for today. A blank. I can't say it wasn't anticipated, but I learned an awful lot today, which hopefully I can put into practice when conditions are more suited to the catching of big bass. If you want to follow me, subscribe and hit that like button just down there. I'll see you all next time, hopefully. Bye for now.